Okay, can you hear me? I just said that and then waited like I shouldn't be continuing to make noise to make sure that you can indeed hear me. We got one person. We got a link in the thread on Twitter. We got the rest of chapter 10. My fourth favorite boob. Probably the prosthesis my mom threw at my dad. Because that was really funny. Awesome. Awesome. We're all here. Okay, fantastic. I'm going to start from the beginning of the chapter because it was about 2 paragraphs. And then I can delete the other videos because we won't need them. Okay. Frankenstein. Thank you. Thank you for being excited about this and not like, oh, for fuck's sake, here we go again. This bitch, honestly. Okay. I'm going to delete the other ones. So basically, Victor has gone into the woods, the mountains, fucking Switzerland, wilderness, to be alone and upset. Oh, thank you, Nash. That's awesome. So Frankenstein, chapter 10. He's sad. He's the saddest boy who ever lived. He's 21 years old and his life is over. Poor boy. I spent the following day roaming through the valley. I stood beside the sources of the Arveiron, which take their rise in a glacier that with slow pace is advancing down from the summit of the hills to barricade the valley. The abrupt sides of vast mountains were before me. The icy wall of the glacier overhung me. A few shattered pines were scattered around, and the solemn silence of this glorious presence chamber of imperial nature was broken only by the brawling waves or the fall of some vast fragment, the thunder sound of the avalanche, or the cracking reverberated along the mountains of the accumulated ice, which, through the silent working of immutable laws, was ever and anon rent and torn, as if it had been but a plaything in their hands. Yep, that was a sentence. Yeah, see, that's fine. If you call me a bitch but say that I'm nice, that's, well, I'm not nice, but, you know, very critical of Victor Frankenstein. These sublime and magnificent scenes afforded me the greatest consolation that I was capable of receiving. I'm doing the drama voice again, because he's dramatic. And I lost my... Here we go. They elevated me from all littleness of feeling, and although they did not remove my grief, they subdued and tranquilized it. In some degree, also, they diverted my mind from the thoughts over which I had brooded for the last month. I retired to rest at night, my slumbers, as it were, waited on and ministered to by the assemblance of grand shapes which I had contemplated during the day. They congregated around me. The unstained, snowy mountain top, the glittering pinnacle, the pine woods and ragged bare ravine, the eagle soaring amidst the clouds. They all gathered round me and bade me be at peace. And now we're up to some new stuff. Where had they fled when the next morning I awoke? All of soul inspiriting fled with sleep, and dark melancholy clouded every thought. The rain was pouring in torrents, and thick mists hid the summits of the mountains, so that I even saw not the faces of those mighty friends. Still I would penetrate their misty veil and seek them in their cloudy retreats. What were rain and storm to me? My mule was brought to the door, and I resolved to ascend to the summit of Montanvert. I think the rain and storm mean something to the mule, but okay. I remembered the effect that the view of the tremendous and ever-moving glacier had produced upon my mind when I first saw it. It had then filled me with a sublime ecstasy that gave wings to the soul and allowed it to soar from the obscure world to light and joy. The sight of the awful and majestic in nature had indeed always the effect of solemnizing my mind and causing me to forget the passing cares of life. I determined to go without a guide, for I was well acquainted with the path, and the presence of another would destroy the solitary grandeur of the scene. Just then, my cousin Megan Frankenstein joined me. Oh no, it's happening. Freeform self-insert fanfiction, live on YouTube. It's like improv, but it's much worse somehow. The ascent is precipitous, but the path is cut into continual and short windings, which enable you to surmount the perpendicularity of the mountain. It is a scene terrifically desolate. In 1,000 spots, the trace of the winter avalanche may be perceived, where trees lie broken and strewed on the ground, some entirely destroyed, others bent, leaning upon the jutting rocks of the mountain, or transversely upon other trees. The path, as you ascend higher, is intersected by ravines of snow, down which stones continually roll from above. One of them is particularly dangerous, as the slightest sound, such as even speaking in a loud voice, produces a concussion of air sufficient to draw destruction upon the head of the speaker. The pines are not tall or luxuriant, but they are somber and add an air of severity to the scene. I looked on the valley beneath. Vast mists were rising from the rivers which ran through it, and curling in thick wreaths around the opposite mountains, whose summits were hid in the uniform clouds while rain poured from the dark sky and added to the melancholy impression I received from the objects around me. Alas! Why does man boast of sensibilities superior to those apparent in the brute? It only renders them more necessary beings. If our impulses were confined to hunger, thirst, and desire, we might be nearly free. But now we are moved by every wind that blows, and a chance word or scene that word may convey to us. And then there's a bit of poetry here. I don't know where it's from. Yeah, literature 2.0. Yeah, we could do it. We rest. A dream has power to poison sleep. We rise. One wandering thought pollutes the day. We feel, conceive, or reason, laugh or weep, embrace fond woe, or cast our cares away. It is the same. For, be it joy or sorrow, the path of its departure still is free. Man's yesterday may ne'er be like his morrow. Naught may endure but mutability. I admire Mary Shelley very much. I think it's good she wrote a novel and not more poetry. She's going to kick my ass in heaven when I'm not getting there. It's fine. It was nearly noon when I arrived at the top of the ascent. For some time I sat upon the rock that overlooks the sea of ice. A mist covered both that and the surrounding mountains. Presently a breeze dissipated the cloud, and I descended upon the glacier. The surface is very uneven, rising like the waves of a troubled sea, descending low and interspersed by rifts that sink deep. The field of ice is almost a league in width, but I spent nearly 2 hours in crossing it. The opposite mountain is a bare perpendicular rock. From the side where I now stood, Montanvert was exactly opposite, at the distance of a league, and above it rose Mont Blanc in its awful majesty. Yeah, I mean, I might visit, but I don't think I'll be, allotted a spot there. Seems unlikely. I remained in a recess of the rock, gazing on this wonderful and stupendous scene. And again, you guys know these are all words that meant something different back then. Stupendous. Leaves you kind of gobsmacked, wordless. Doesn't mean incredible. Wonderful just means you're wondering at it. It is a wonder of the world. Awful, it inspires awe. Terrific, it inspires terror. It's that kind of thing. The sea, or rather the vast river of ice, wound among its dependent mountains, whose aerial summits hung over its recesses. Their icy and glittering peaks shone in the light of the sunlight over the clouds. My heart, which was before sorrowful, now swelled with something like joy. I exclaimed, "Wandering spirits, if indeed you wander, and do not rest in your narrow beds, allow me this faint happiness, or take me as your companion away from the joys of life. Instills a stupor. Yeah, exactly. I couldn't think of the word stupor. Let me do a different reading of that line. Wandering spirits, if indeed you wander and do not rest in your narrow beds, allow me this faint happiness, or take me as your companion away from the joys of life. Can't imagine why a ghost wouldn't want to hang out with him. That's how I'm as old as I am. I never thought I'd live this long, but turns out ghosts just really don't want to hang out with me. As I said this, oh, pay attention, guys, it's getting exciting. As I said this, I suddenly beheld the figure of a man at some distance, advancing towards me with superhuman speed. Excuse me. Skull. No, I thought I heard a cat. He bounded over the crevices in the ice, among which I had walked with caution. His stature also, as he approached, seemed to exceed that of man. I was troubled. Oh, Victor. Were you? Were you, sweetie? Were you troubled? Yeah, exactly. Who could it be? Who could this 8-foot being be? I was troubled. A mist came over my eyes, and I felt a faintness seize me, stored by the cold gale of the mountains. I perceived, as the shape came nearer, sight tremendous and abhorred, that it was the wretch whom I had created. I trembled with rage and horror, resolving to wait his approach and then close with him in mortal combat. If I were a professional, I would put the music over this bit. He approached. His countenance bespoke bitter anguish, combined with disdain and malignity, while its unearthly ugliness rendered it almost too horrible for human eyes. But I scarcely observed this. Rage and hatred had at first deprived me of utterance, and I recovered only to overwhelm him with words expressive of furious detestation and contempt. "Devil," I exclaimed, "do you dare approach me? And do not you fear the fierce vengeance of my arm wreaked on your miserable head? Begone, vile insect, or rather, stay that I may trample you to dust, and oh, that I could, with the extinction of your miserable existence, restore those victims whom you have so diabolically murdered." Some people say good morning. It's up to you. "I expected this reception," said the demon. "All men hate the wretched. How then must I be hated, who am miserable beyond all living things? Yet you, my creator, detest and spurn me, thy creature, to whom thou art bound by ties only dissoluble by the annihilation of one of us. You purpose to kill me. How dare you sport thus with life? Do your duty towards me, and I will do mine towards you and the rest of mankind. If you will comply with my conditions, I will leave them and you at peace. But if you refuse, I will glut the maw of death until it be satiated with the blood of your remaining friends." Some of us say good morning back. Again, very much up to your own personal preference. "Abhorred monster, fiend that thou art, the tortures of hell are too mild a vengeance for thy crimes. Wretched devil, you reproach me with your creation? Come on, then, that I may extinguish the spark which I so negligently bestowed." It's getting heated. My rage was without bounds. I sprang on him, impelled by all the feelings which can arm one being against the existence of another. He easily eluded me and said, "Be calm. I entreat you to hear me before you give vent to your hatred on my devoted head. Have I not suffered enough that you seek to increase my misery? Life, although it may only be an accumulation of anguish, is dear to me, and I will defend it. Remember, thou hast made me more powerful than thyself. My height is superior to thine. my joints more supple. But I will not be tempted to set myself in opposition to thee. I am thy creature, and I will be even mild and docile to my natural lord and king, if thou wilt also perform thy part, the which thou owest me. O Frankenstein, be not equitable to every other, and trample upon me alone, to whom thy justice, and even thy clemency and affection is most due. Remember that I am thy creature. I ought to be thy Adam, but I am rather the fallen angel whom thou drivest from joy for no misdeed. Everywhere I see bliss, from which I alone am irrevocably excluded. I was benevolent and good. Misery made me a fiend. Make me happy, and I shall again be virtuous. Exactly. I will definitely be virtuous as long as people are just making me happy all the time. This is so dramatic, by the way. These two. Wow. Be gone. I will not hear you. There can be no community between you and me. We are enemies. Be gone, or let us try our strength in a fight in which one must fall. You ever know when you kind of go up to your dad and you're like, hey, Dad? And he's like, I don't want to talk right now. And you're like, oh, do you even want to fight to the death or not? And he's like, he's busy. Busy doing what? Oh, hi, Evelyn. Yeah, no one here's vexed. Okay, well, it's hard to recap, but Victor is on the mountain and he and the creature are having a big old argument. Don't bother watching the first two chapter 10 videos because they both cut out. It was such bullshit. It was so dumb. How can I move thee? Will no entreaties cause thee to turn a favourable eye upon thy creature, who implores thy goodness and compassion? Believe me, Frankenstein, I was benevolent. My soul glowed with love and humanity. But am I not alone? Miserably alone? You, my creator, abhor me. What hope can I gather from your fellow creatures who owe me nothing? They spurn and hate me. The desert mountains and dreary glaciers are my refuge. I have wandered here many days. The caves of ice, which I only do not fear, are a dwelling to me, and the only one which man does not grudge. These bleak skies I hail, for they are kinder to me than your fellow beings. If the multitude of mankind knew of my existence, they would do as you do, and arm themselves for my destruction. Shall I not then hate them who abhor me? I will keep no terms with my enemies. I am miserable, and they shall share my wretchedness, and deliver them from an evil which it only remains for you to make so great, that not only you and your family, but thousands of others shall be swallowed up in the whirlwinds of its rage. Let your compassion be moved, and do not disdain me. Listen to my tale. When you have heard that, abandon or commiserate me, as you shall judge that I deserve. But hear me. The guilty are allowed by human laws, bloody as they are, to speak in their own defense before they are condemned. So listen to me, Frankenstein. You accuse me of murder, and yet you would, with a satisfied conscience, destroy your own creature. Oh, praise the eternal justice of man. Yet I ask you not to spare me. Listen to me. And then, if you can, and if you will, destroy the work of your hands. That's right. Oh, hi, Julie. Thank you. Well, yes, I explained in one of the previous videos that my family is so long-lived that turning 35 is like entering adolescence. So I'm going to be a teenager. It's going to be amazing. I'll finally sit at the grown-up table at Christmas. Now, this is amazing because we are already inside, I think we're still inside a letter to his sister of the ship's captain. Yes, yep. Oh, It's amazing. I smoked nearly a whole cigarette one time. I got so high. Yes, it's a flashback. I know. Victor Frankenstein is not a listener, he is a talker. And I should know because I am also a talker and not a listener. I do these videos and then I don't listen to anything else. I barely listen to podcasts or anything. Terrible. Ah, why do you call to my remembrance? I rejoined, circumstances of which I shudder to reflect, that I have been the miserable origin and author. Cursed be the day, abhorred devil, in which you first saw light. Cursed, although I curse myself, be the hands that formed you. You have made me wretched beyond expression. You have left me no power to consider whether I am just to you or not. Begone and relieve me from the sight of your detested form. Isn't that just what parents say to their kids? Oh, that's such an old meme. What's up, Father Dog? Welcome. Such an old meme. Ah. Thus I relieve thee, my creator, he said, and placed his hated hands before my eyes, which I flung from me with violence. Thus I take from thee a sight which you abhor. Still thou canst listen to me and grant me thy compassion. By the virtues that I once possessed, I demand this from you. Hear my tale. It is long and strange, because of course it is. And the temperature of this place is not fitting to your fine sensations. Come to the hut upon the mountain. The sun is yet high in the heavens. Before it descends to hide itself behind your snowy precipices and illuminate another world, you will have heard my story and can decide. On you it rests whether I quit forever the neighborhood of man and lead a harmless life, or become the scourge of your fellow creatures and the author of your own speedy ruin. Yeah, me too. That is something awful hoodie from 2005. So when the creature first up, yeah, exactly. You just start talking. You just jump into it. When the creature first showed up, Victor was like, I'm going to kill you because I hate you so much. And the creature went, you made me 8 foot tall and stronger than you, so that probably won't work. And Victor doesn't even take the time to be like, shit. Should not have made that thing way stronger than me and mad. Franco, James Franco, Frankenstein. Victor Franco, the third Franco brother. The one who does unhallowed experiments. Like your highness. As he said this, the author of Your Own Speedy Ruin, not the stuff about the Franco brothers. As he said this, he led the way across the ice. I followed. My heart was full, and I did not answer him. No, I want to, though. I do want to watch that. Get back to reading, you stupid bitch. Oh my god, okay, fine. I weighed the various arguments that he had used and determined at least to listen to his tale. I was partly urged by curiosity, and compassion confirmed my resolution. I had hitherto supposed him to be the murderer of my brother, and I eagerly sought a confirmation or denial of this opinion. For the first time also I felt what the duties of a creator towards his creature were, and that I ought to render him happy before I complained of his wickedness. These motives urged me to comply with his demand. We crossed the ice, therefore, and ascended the opposite rock. The air was cold, and the rain again began to descend. We entered the hut, the fiend with an air of exultation, I with a heavy heart and depressed spirits. But I consented to listen, and seating myself by the fire which my odious companion had lighted, he thus began his tale. The third Franco brother is Victor Franco. It's canon. Oh, God, I love that. I love that when comedy actors just do a thing they do and it becomes a bit. I think I'm going to read chapter 11 because do you really want me to stop right now when the creature is about to begin his tale? So, like, I wandered out of your laboratory and I bumped into an old woman and I said, "What are you doing here?" And she said, "Listen to my tale." The year was 1684. The glorious revolution was still 4 years in the future, and we struggled under the rule of James II and his wife Mary of Modena. This is the original origin story. Okay, hang on, let me just adjust how I'm sitting so I'm not hurting my legs or what have you. King James Franco II. Oh my. That just gave me, well, not really an idea. More of a more of a nothing, because I can't think right now. I have to read the next chapter. Oh, we have 11 viewers right now. That's exciting because this is chapter 11 of Frankenstein, The Creature's Tale. James the Less. Hey. It is with considerable difficulty that I remember the original era of my being. All the events of that period appear confused and indistinct. A strange multiplicity of sensations seized me, and I saw, felt, heard, and smelt at the same time, and it was indeed a long time before I learned to distinguish between the operations of my various senses. By degrees, I remember, a stronger light pressed upon my nerves, so that I was obliged to shut my eyes. Darkness then came over me and troubled me, but hardly had I felt this when, by opening my eyes, as I now suppose, the light poured in on me again. I walked, and I believe descended, but I presently found a great alteration in my sensations. Before, dark and opaque bodies had surrounded me, impervious to my touch or sight. But I now found that I could wander on at liberty, with no obstacles which I could not either surmount or avoid. Yeah, it sounds very confusing. Oh, that reminds me, I've got ketamine on Tuesday. Nice. The light became more and more oppressive to me, and the heat wearying me as I walked, I sought a place where I could receive shade. Twitter.com, am I right? You can receive a ton of shade there. Do you get it? Slang. This was the forest near Ingolstadt, and here I lay by the side of a brook, resting from my fatigue, until I felt tormented by hunger and thirst. This roused me from my nearly dormant state, and I ate some berries which I found hanging on the trees or lying on the ground. I slaked my thirst at the brook, and then lying down was overcome by sleep. It was dark when I awoke. I felt cold also, and half frightened, as it were, instinctively, finding myself so desolate. Before I had quitted your apartment, on a sensation of cold, I had covered myself with some clothes, but these were insufficient to secure me from the dews of night. I was a poor, helpless, miserable wretch. I knew and could distinguish nothing, but feeling pain invade me on all sides, I sat down and wept. Poor little fella. Hey, Pan and Scan, welcome. Oh yeah. I mean, is Victor spilling the tea? Is the creature spilling the tea? You know what? I don't have to care about that stuff. I know. His description of blinking for the first time, he's like, yeah, looking back, that was probably blinking. You know, when all the light was there, and I was like, ah, and then the dark was there, and I was like, ah, and then the light came back. Pretty sure that was a blink. I feel so sad for the creature. He's cold. Soon a gentle light stole over the heavens and gave me a sensation of pleasure. I started up and beheld a radiant form rise from among the trees. The moon. I gazed with a kind of wonder. It moved slowly in search of berries. He's a little lad who loves berries and cream. You remember that? Shit, are we disconnecting again? No? We are just lagging. Oh, I know. The first time it rains, he's going to flip out. I was still cold when under one of the trees I found a huge cloak, with which I covered myself and sat down upon the ground. Who leaves a huge cloak and... Never mind. Not important. Thank you, Evelyn. No distinct ideas occupied my mind. All was confused. I felt light and hunger and thirst and darkness. Innumerable sounds rang in my ears, and on all sides various scents saluted me. The only object that I could distinguish was the bright moon, and I fixed my eyes on that with pleasure. Hey, Canna 111. He's like a baby looking at the thing you put above a baby so it can look at it. He's like that. Several changes of day and night passed, and the orb of night had greatly lessened when I began to distinguish my sensations from each other. I gradually saw plainly the clear stream that supplied me with drink, me with their foliage. I was delighted when I first discovered that a pleasant sound, which often saluted my ears, proceeded from the throats of the little winged animals who had often intercepted the light from my eyes. I began also to observe, with greater accuracy, the forms that surrounded me and to perceive the boundaries of the radiant roof of light which canopied me. Sometimes I tried to imitate the pleasant songs of the birds, but was unable. Sometimes I wished to express my sensations in my own mode, but the uncouth and inarticulate sounds which broke from me frightened me into silence again. Yes. Yeah, I've heard about this. I will probably have to watch it. And yes, that's true. Sometimes you do just throw your cloak. You get mad or you want to make a point and you can't remember what it was. Yeah, in here it was in square brackets, but I don't want to just say it because I don't want you guys to be like, what the fuck is he looking at? I don't know. It's an oncoming train, but it's really slow. The moon had disappeared from the night, and again, with a lessened form, showed itself while I still remained in the forest. God, it's taking them like a month to developmentally reach some developmental milestones. Pretty good. Oh, yeah. Could have been. Someone had a fight with their horse, threw its coat away. Makes sense. My sensations had by this time become distinct, and my mind received every day additional ideas. My eyes became accustomed to the light and to perceive objects in their right forms. I distinguished the insect from the herb, and by degrees one herb from another. I found that the sparrow uttered none but harsh notes, whilst those of the blackbird and thrush were sweet and enticing. One day, when I was oppressed by cold, I found a fire which had been left by some wandering beggars, and was overcome with delight at the warmth I experienced from it. In my joy, I thrust my hand into the live embers, but quickly drew it out again with a cry of pain. How strange, I thought, that the same cause should produce such opposite effects. I examined the materials of the fire, and to my joy found it to be composed of wood. I quickly collected some branches, but they were wet and would not burn. I was pained at this, and sat still watching the operation of the fire. The wet wood which I had placed near the heat dried and itself became inflamed. I reflected on this, and by touching the various branches, I discovered the cause and busied myself in collecting a great quantity of wood, that I might dry it and have a plentiful supply of fire. When night came on and brought sleep with it, I was in the greatest fear lest my fire should be extinguished. I covered it carefully with dry wood and leaves and placed wet branches upon it, and then, spreading my cloak, I lay on the ground and sank into sleep. This is such a smart baby. I know. It's like, now I'm not even worried if I leave my baby in the woods because I know that within about a month, he'll be, he'll be making fire. He'll be fine. Or, that's his business, really. I'm doing my thing. He's in the woods. It was morning when I awoke, and my first care was to visit the fire. I uncovered it, and a gentle breeze quickly fanned it into a flame. I observed this also, and contrived a fan of branches, which roused the embers when they were very nearly extinguished. Yeah, I know, right? He's like a Westworld host. Oh, this is just a Westworld ripoff. Disappointing. When night came again, I found with pleasure that the fire gave light as well as heat, and that the discovery of this element was useful to me in my food. For I found some of the offals that the travellers had left had been roasted, and tasted much more savoury than the berries I gathered from the trees. I tried, therefore, to dress my food in the same manner, placing it on the live embers. I found that the berries were spoiled by this operation, and the nuts and roots much improved. He's doing so well. He's like, sorry, itch. He's like saying, you created me, but I actually didn't need you. Look at all this. Could you have done that? No. I was working out all this stuff by myself. I was fine. Food, however, became scarce, and I often spent the whole day searching in vain for a few acorns to assuage the pangs of hunger. When I found this, I resolved to quit the place that I had hitherto inhabited, to seek for one where the few wants I experienced would be more easily satisfied. In this emigration, I exceedingly lamented the loss of the fire, which I had obtained through accident and knew not how to reproduce it. I gave several hours to the serious consideration of this difficulty, but I was obliged to relinquish all attempt to supply it, and wrapping myself up in my cloak, I struck across the wood towards the setting sun. I passed 3 days in these rambles, and at length discovered the open country. A great fall of snow had taken place the night before, and the fields were of one uniform white. The appearance was disconsolate, and I found my feet chilled by the cold, damp substance that covered the ground. Yeah. He's I don't know what the opposite of a fail son is, but that's the creature. Yeah. He knows how to feed himself and how to keep a fire going, if not how to make one. I couldn't make one. No, I couldn't make a fire if I didn't have any stuff. It was about 7 in the morning, and I longed to obtain food and shelter. At length I perceived a small hut on a rising ground, which had doubtless been built for the convenience of some shepherd. This was a new sight to me, and I examined the structure with great curiosity. Finding the door open, I entered. An old man sat in it, near a fire over which he was preparing his breakfast. He turned on hearing a noise, and perceiving me, shrieked loudly, and quitting the hut, ran across the fields with a speed of which his debilitated form hardly appeared capable. His appearance, different from any I had ever before seen, and his flight somewhat surprised me. But I was enchanted by the appearance of the hut. Here the snow and rain could not penetrate. The ground was dry, and it presented to me then as exquisite and divine a retreat as pandemonium appeared to the demons of hell after their sufferings in the lake of fire. I greedily devoured the remains of the shepherd's breakfast, which consisted of bread, cheese, milk, and wine. The latter, however, I did not like. Then, overcome by fatigue, I lay down among some straw and fell asleep. What if a... Yeah. I know. It's amazing. What if a lack of nurturing can be the downfall of a family or entire community? What if a big man was given an evil brain? They're both really important questions. I hope the creature is on the moon now, but like in a nice part of the moon that he's somehow terraformed. It was noon when I awoke. I know, the poor shepherd. It's just like, that's an 8-foot tall baby. I do not get paid enough to deal with an 8-foot tall baby. I'm out of here. I'm gone. It was noon when I awoke, and allured by the warmth of the sun, which shone brightly on the white ground, I determined to recommence my travels, and depositing the remains of the peasant's breakfast in a wallet I found, I proceeded across the fields for several hours, until at sunset I arrived at a village. Nope, nope, nope. Mm-mm. How miraculous did this appear? The huts, the neater cottages, and stately houses engaged my admiration by turns. The vegetables in the gardens, the milk and cheese that I saw placed at the windows of some of the cottages, allured my appetite. One of the best of these I entered, but I had hardly placed my foot within the door before the children shrieked and one of the women fainted. The whole village was roused. Some fled, some attacked me, until, grievously bruised by stones and many other kinds of missile weapons, I escaped to the open country and fearfully took refuge in a low hovel, quite bare, and making a wretched appearance after the palaces I had beheld in the village. This hovel, however, joined a cottage of a neat and pleasant appearance, but after my late, dearly bought experience, I dared not enter it. My place of refuge was constructed of wood, but so low that I could with difficulty sit upright in it. No wood, however, was placed on the earth, which formed the floor, but it was dry, and although the wind entered it by innumerable chinks, I found it an agreeable asylum from the snow and rain. She does choose her moments, doesn't she? Come on, my love. Come and shelter from the cold and the rain and the Frankensteins. Is Niobe there? No. No. Okay, good. Yeah. That was Flora. You guys probably couldn't hear it, but she just howled. Like, come on, let me in. Stop reading about how sad you are for this creature and let me in. Here then I retreated, and lay down happy to have found a shelter, however miserable, from the inclemency of the season, and still more from the barbarity of man. As soon as morning dawned, I crept from my kennel, that I might view the adjacent cottage and discover if I could remain in the habitation I had found. It was situated against the back of the cottage, and surrounded on the sides, which were exposed by a pigsty and a clear pool of water. One part was open, and by that I had crept in, but now I covered every crevice by which I might be perceived with stones and wood, yet in such a manner that I might move them on occasion to pass out. All of the light I enjoyed came through the sty, and that was sufficient for me. Poor creature. It's not nice, is it? Having thus arranged my dwelling and carpeted it with clean straw, I retired, for I saw the figure of a man at a distance, and I remembered too well my treatment the night before to trust myself in his power. I had first, however, provided for my sustenance for that day by a loaf of coarse bread, which I purloined, and a cup with which I could drink more conveniently than from my hand of the pure water which flowed by my retreat. The floor was a little raised, so that it was kept perfectly dry, and by its vicinity to the chimney of the cottage it was tolerably warm. He's living in a dog kennel, but he's happy. Sort of. Being thus provided, I resolved to reside in this hovel until something should occur which might alter my determination. I mean, that is kind of my attitude at the moment. I'm not in a hovel. I'm in a hoarder flat. It's a perfectly lovely flat that's just filled with all my hoarder nonsense. It was indeed a paradise compared to the blue forest, my former residence. The rain-dropping branches and dank earth. I ate my breakfast with pleasure, and was about to remove a plank to procure myself a little water, when I heard a step, and looking through a small chink, I beheld a young creature with a pail on her head passing before my hovel. The girl was young and of gentle demeanour, unlike what I have since found cottagers and farmhouse servants to be. It's classist. This is problematic. Yet she was meanly dressed, a coarse blue petticoat and a linen jacket being her only garb, Her fair hair was plaited but not adorned. She looked patient yet sad. I lost sight of her, and in about a quarter of an hour she returned bearing the pail, which was now partly filled with milk. As she walked along, seemingly incommoded by the burden, a young man met her, whose countenance expressed a deeper despondence. Uttering a few sounds with an air of melancholy, he took the pail from her head and bore it to the cottage himself. She followed, and they disappeared. Presently I saw the young man again, with some tools in his hand, cross the field behind the cottage, and the girl was also busied, sometimes in the house and sometimes in the yard. Yeah, he'll get there. He'll get to class consciousness, I'm sure. On examining my dwelling, I found that one of the windows of the cottage had formerly occupied a part of it, but the panes had been filled up with wood. Hello, Floridora. What are you doing? What are you doing? I wanted to come up here, but she's not going to. Or is she? You coming up, my love? I think she might be. We all have to be cool, okay? In one of these, the panes that were filled up with wood, was a small and almost imperceptible chink through which the eye could just penetrate. Through this crevice, a small room was visible, whitewashed and clean, but very bare of furniture. In one corner, hang on, I lost it. In one corner, near a small fire, sat an old man, leaning his head on his hands in a disconsolate attitude. The young girl was occupied in arranging the cottage, but presently she took something out of a drawer which employed her hands, and she sat down beside the old man, who, taking up an instrument, began to play and to produce sounds sweeter than the voice of the thrush or the nightingale. Oh, you bitch. She's not coming up. Sorry. It was a lovely sight, even to me, poor wretch who had never beheld aught beautiful before. The silver hair and benevolent countenance of the aged cottager won my reverence, while the gentle manners of the girl enticed my love. He played a sweet, mournful air, which I perceived drew tears from the eyes of his amiable companion, of which the old man took no notice, until she sobbed audibly. He then pronounced a few sounds, and the fair creature, leaving her work, knelt at his feet. He raised her and smiled with such kindness and affection that I felt sensations of a peculiar and overpowering nature. They were a mixture of pain and pleasure such as I had never before experienced, either from hunger or cold, warmth or food, and I withdrew from the window, unable to bear these emotions. Yeah, I still have no idea what they are. It's whatever. It's like what you feel for a dog, but sometimes you feel it for a human being, where you're like, if at all possible, I would like not to have to get you put down. I'm not sure what that is. I'm told it's friendship. I'm learning. Come here, sweetie. Come here. Come on. I'm a good place to sit. Come on, the people want to see you. Give me a kiss. Yeah. I mean, it's like when I'm at a friend's house and they're a family who like yells at each other all the time, that's really freaky. Not a yeller. Come here. Flora. 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 You wanna come here? Come on. Wanna cuddle? I'm trying to tempt her. We're gonna come up out of it. Yeah, there's no cat here at all. I can't move the camera, otherwise you'll see. You'll find out that I've gone mad. Madder. More mad. Soon after this, the young man returned, bearing on his shoulders a load of wood. The girl met him at the door, helped to relieve him of his burden, and taking some of the fuel into the cottage, placed it on the fire. Then she and the youth went apart into a nook of the cottage, and he showed her a large loaf and a piece of cheese. She seemed pleased and went into the garden for some roots and plants, which she placed in water and then upon the fire. She afterwards continued her work, whilst the young man went into the garden and appeared busily employed in digging and pulling up roots. After he had been employed thus about an hour, the young woman joined him and they entered the cottage together. This is the bit where the creature learns how to be very, very boring. Very boring. We don't need to go day by day, you know? The old man had, in the meantime, been pensive. But on the appearance of his companions, he assumed a more cheerful air, and they sat down to eat. The meal was quickly dispatched. The young woman was again occupied in arranging the cottage. The old man walked before the cottage in the sun for a few minutes, leaning on the arm of the youth. Nothing could exceed in beauty the contrast between these two excellent creatures. One was old, with silver hairs and a countenance beaming with benevolence and love. The younger was slight and graceful in his figure, and his features were moulded with the finest symmetry, yet his eyes and attitude expressed the utmost sadness and despondency. The old man returned to the cottage, and the youth, with tools different from those he had used in the morning, directed his steps across the fields. Flora, come here. Give me a kiss. Ungrateful creature, I will fight and— oh, hi, Fitzy. I wondered what she was staring at. It was Fitz. Hey, boyo. He doesn't need to go outside. He's just going to sit washing himself for a second. Just going to take this out of the way, or at least try to. Night quickly shut in, but to my extreme wonder, I found that the cottagers had a means of prolonging light by the use of tapers, and was delighted to find that the setting of the sun did not put an end to the pleasure I experienced in watching my human neighbours. In the evening, the young girl and her companion were employed in various occupations which I did not understand, and the old man again took up the instrument which produced the divine sounds that had enchanted me in the morning. So soon as he had finished, the youth began, not to play, but to utter sounds that were monotonous, and neither resembling the harmony of the old man's instrument nor the songs of the birds. I had since found out that he read aloud, but at the time I knew nothing of the science of words or letters. The family, after having been thus occupied for a short time, extinguished their lights and retired, as I conjectured, to rest. The end of chapter 11. So, we are into the Matryoshka doll of Frankenstein, the Frankensteinian narrative thing, block stackers for babies. This thing is really cool, but, well, really cool. I think it's pretty cool, but it's a bit of a pain. So that was kind of interesting because we went from this incredibly extra scene on the mountaintop between Victor and the creature, both trying to be the most dramatic person in the entire world. And then we've come to like a description of being a baby, and then a really boring account of the lives of these people who live in this cottage. And it just feels like a change of pace that's also, that keeps your attention. Like if it was all that kind of shouting and I'm going to pull you in twain and no, I'm going to ruin your life and kill everyone in the world, it would be, you get bored. But if you put some boring parts in, I guess that's good. I don't know. I've never written Frankenstein. As far as I know, only one person actually has. Exactly. Another frame story. I want them to just keep going. First I was a baby, then I spied on my neighbours, And here we are. It brings us to today, I think. Yes, thank you very much for being here with me and for enjoying my exciting wig. It's quite nice, actually. I like the colour. Yeah, it would be Wuthering Nights. Wuthering Nights. I've just thought of a wonderful title for an erotic rewrite. But it's also a nesting doll of people telling stories of their lives. Break from being overwrought, yeah. So yeah, thank you everybody for being here and for being patient enough to sit with me over the 3 live read videos that I've done today that kept getting all fucked up. Yeah, Wuthering Nights. Oh, what if it's King Arthur's court? But everyone has to stay happy, otherwise they die. No, that's stupid. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. I will see you tomorrow at the usual time of 6:30, I believe. And yeah, stay safe. Wash your hands. I'm a doctor, and I mustn't be vexed. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, 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 bye.